BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just a quick reminder, every Monday is Zodiac Mondays, Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything, that's an AMA, so please drop your questions below for things that you would like discussed here on the show, and Friday is an Anything Goes, any subject is fair game, mostly talking about true crime, serial killers, the Zodiac Killer, but any subject is welcome. Alright, so please share some ideas in the comment section about what you would like to hear about on this channel, and let's get started. Okay, hello everybody. Today is Friday, and Anything Goes Friday. Welcome to the show. Once again, we are going back to 2016 to discuss the murder of Terry Leanne Bevers, more commonly known as Missy. Now, it is currently the month of April, and it has been just around 5 years since Missy Bevers was murdered in Midlothian, Texas. And there's an episode of Crime Junkie that covers Missy Bevers' case, and it introduces it by saying, when Texas fitness instructor Missy Bevers was murdered in 2016, the police and the public seized on an unusual clue that could lead them to her killer. And this unusual clue is one of the perhaps more famous true crime clues out there, and it's a particular video of someone wearing what appears to be police tactical gear like SWAT team gear, walking up and down the hallways of a church where Missy Bevers was supposed to have been conducting her fitness boot camp. There's also a Facebook post that had been put out just prior to the day that Missy Bevers was murdered, talking about the location of where she was going to be doing the early morning fitness boot camp. But yes, of course, Missy Bevers lost her life that day, and still, at 5 years later, we do not have any arrests in the case. And to help us out, I'm going to go over to talkmurder.com that posted a set of Missy Bevers case facts, and I will read here. As a fitness trainer, Missy Bevers would teach a 5 a.m. class at the community church. She was murdered shortly before one of these classes. Missy was also married and a mother of 3 and very active in the community. Missy and her husband, Brandon Bevers, were reported to have both had financial issues and marital issues. Brandon had an alibi as he was 600 miles away on a fishing trip during the murder. The person seen in the video can be between either 5 feet 2 inches tall or 5 feet 7 inches tall, and I think the clearest way to repeat that is the killer can be anywhere between 5 feet 2 and 5 foot 7. Although from looking at some other things that I was talking about when I did a 2020 update for the murder of Missy Bevers, I've definitely heard estimates that the killer could be as tall as 5'8" or 5'9", and this just leads us into the next point. The killer had a very distinctive walking gait, and in this video, people began to draw upon the suspicion that, well, they just really began to form the peculiar question, is this a man or a woman in the video? And there's been a very large debate that goes on. I mean, people are really trying to analyze the footage, but man or woman, male or female, how does that explain the odd walking style of the perpetrator in that costume? I should say alleged perpetrator, but the toes are pointed almost outward in a very unusual way, and some people think that the person could be wearing shoes that are too large for them, or perhaps the person may even have a prosthetic leg. There are about 1 or 2 frames in that security footage that shows what appears to be something that could possibly be a metallic reflection off of something that is near the ankle of the person in the tactical gear. So that's something that has been discussed as well. The next point on the list is a 2010 to 2012 silver Nissan Altima that has not yet been identified, but it was seen driving through the parking lot in the hours before the murder, entered at 1:58 a.m. and exited at 2:04 a.m. Well, this has listed that, but this is actually quite far away because I guess I can jump in and say that last time I did a Missy Bevers update, Tim Colville from Gumshoe Stories, who has followed the case very closely, wrote into the channel to say something about that, and Stephanie Harlow even described Tim Koval as the leading internet authority on the Missy Bevers case, and he wanted to just re-emphasize that point, that the parking lot that is talking about, where this suspicious silver Nissan Altima is actually 0.8 miles away from the church where Missy Bevers was found murdered. So it's not across the street, it's not just over. And if you look at maps of the area in Midlothian, Texas, where this took place, it is quite apparent that that is it's definitely not as close by as articles like that would have you believe. But yes, there is this suspicious silver Nissan Altima, and some people believe that that was either the perpetrator, or that was a lookout, or that was somebody who had seen something that they shouldn't have. But that's still very difficult to say because of all the uncertainty surrounding it. And because Tim Koval had written into the channel, just in the comment section, responding to the 2020 update about Missy Bevers, I had contacted him via his website, Gumshoe Stories, and I wanted to say I'm going to do another episode. What is the biggest piece of information that you would want to share with the general public about what happened to Missy Bevers back in 2016? And Tim's response was, just to reiterate the point, that Missy Bevers was killed by a gunshot. For the longest time, the public was thinking that she had either been stabbed, or maybe she had been assaulted with the hammer, or possibly even the pickaxe end of the weapon that the person in the church was carrying. You can see the person in the church striking objects on the wall, maybe trying to break a locked area. So that could have been the murder weapon. There was a very famous clip where Nancy Grace was talking about how Missy Bevers was killed with puncture wounds. That means that she must have been struck with that either hammer or pickaxe. But after looking into this just a little bit, you will learn very quickly that she died from a gunshot. Now, before I read off another message that Tim has written, in the last episode, I read off someone else's YouTube comment where they had written into my channel saying that Missy Bevers had been killed by a gunshot, and it was indeed her own concealed carry, but it appears that that is not true. She died from a gunshot, but I'll just read off Tim Coville's comment here. He says, "Hey, this is Tim Coville. Thank you for the shout-out and covering the case. Every time I find that someone has posted something new about Missy Bevers, it feels like Christmas. It's about keeping the conversation going and increasing awareness of the case." Some comments. "Current thinking from inside sources is that the outfit that the person is wearing in the video is not imitation, other than the helmet being something like a paintball helmet. The rest of the gear is likely authentic." That is point number 1 on Tim's list. I mean, for ages, I thought that was an imitation set of gear. And it's not simply my observation. Brandon Bevers, the widowed husband of Missy Bevers, said very clearly that he thought it was imitation gear. And he was zoning in on the helmet as well. He thought that was not an authentic SWAT team helmet, but many people have thought this, that it was either a pure attempt to construct this out of odds and ends. Maybe they obtained the vest from here, maybe they obtained the pants from there, or some people genuinely thought that it was that certain items had been purchased from costume stores over the years. Maybe even it wouldn't have been purchased directly at the same time, or all the items wouldn't have been purchased at the same time, because even a fool would know that if you buy a police costume and then a murder is committed in the police costume, you would be leaving a very clear record of that. But I mean, people do end up on forensic files for even more ridiculous crimes than that, so perhaps I spoke too soon. Point number 2 on Tim's comment is, Missy Bevers was absolutely not murdered with her own gun. Her gun was in storage in her truck and had not been used. And I did reveal that the source of that was someone just sharing that in the comment section. I believe the person must have conflated the idea that Missy Bevers had a gun, she had a concealed carry, but it wasn't present with her. It was still in her truck. Number 3, police are actively investigating leads at the moment with some new investigators who came on board last year. It is most definitely not a cold case, so we can take comfort in what seems to be a renewed commitment on the part of the Midlothian police to solve this case. I can't say whether or not it is on track, but they are hopefully going to do the right thing. I sure hope it is. Again, thanks for the coverage. Enjoyed your comments. And much appreciated to Tim Coville. Once again, you can find him on YouTube under the name Gumshoe Stories, and he also has a website of the same name. Another great source to find material on the murder of Missy Bevers is the Lord and Arts channel, which is how I first learned about Missy's case. Back in 2017, I began to notice that a lot of YouTube true crime outlets were talking about the murder of Missy Bevers, and there was an enormous amount of attention that was paid to them by the viewers. I noticed that, okay, this true crime channel will be doing relatively well, but the episodes about Missy Bevers were listened to way more frequently, and I had never heard of the story before, back in 2017, that is. So I was like, well, what is going on? Why are people trying to pay more attention to this particular case? And I personally believe it is because of the media that is available, not simply the story of somebody was wearing this type of police outfit and murdered Missy Bevers, but because there is this piece of media that people can analyze, and people can try their best to determine whether or not there is a man or a woman in the costume. Is the person familiar with the layout of the church? And is the person someone who is familiar with Missy Bevers? And there are theories that are going to be going all up and down, all across the spectrum. Tim Coville wrote something very important, though, on his list of myths about the Missy Bevers case, and that is that there was a particular suspect involved, and that was someone named Randy, Missy Bevers' father-in-law, and he had a solid alibi for the time of the I was about to say the shooting, but yes, we could use that word, the shooting, the murder. And his alibi was that he was hundreds of miles away, if not thousands, in Oceanside, California, of all places. So it seems highly unlikely that Missy Bevers was murdered by Randy. However, there was this guy named Ned from BlackBoxOnlineRadio who put out a series of episodes in 2017 called Missy Bevers' Hitman Theory, and I had this suspicion that a lot of other people shared, and they were noticing, hey, the father-in-law's out of town, her husband, Brandon Bevers, was out of town on a fishing trip, and he was also hundreds of miles away, I believe, and I think he was in a different state, and people were thinking that, hey, it's almost too convenient, all these airtight alibis. Is there any possible way that Missy Bevers was set up, that someone had paid money to have her murdered? And hence the name Missy Bevers' Hitman Theory. That was back in a different time when I definitely... Right now, I don't necessarily throw out my far-out ridiculous true crime theories because they're almost always wrong. But I would like to go over to an article. But I mean, before I read this article, I should just say that's some food for thought that we can still hold on to and try to digest, excuse me. But I would like to go over to an article from huntakiller.com. I had never heard of this one before, but this one was published by someone named Maddie Rowley. Maddie, thank you for this article. And it says, the Missy Bevers case is one of those cold cases that really sticks with you because the details are so strange. If you've heard about this case, you may have seen the creepy video of an unidentified person in police SWAT gear roaming the halls of Creekside Church in Midlothian, Texas. The morning of Missy Bevers' murder, this person was shuffling aimlessly from room to room, peeking indoors, breaking things, and using some sort of hammer or crowbar. And I even brought up the possibility it definitely be a hammer, but also have one of those almost like an ice pick or rock picks on the back of it. But we can safely assume that the person in the video was involved with Missy's death. I mean, that's why I have to say alleged perpetrator, only because the parts that have been revealed to the general public that I've witnessed with my own two eyes simply show somebody roaming the church. But I think that we can use our imagination just a little bit. Now, Missy Bevers was a 45-year-old mother of three, and she had arrived at Creekside Church around 4 a.m. A lot of people believe that the perpetrator was there at least 3:30 a.m. This was on April 18th, 2016. She was set to teach a 5 a.m. fitness class and had arrived early to set up the space beforehand. When her students had arrived, they found her on the floor, riddled with puncture wounds all over her head and body. Well, I don't even want to talk too much about the puncture wounds because, as I said, that was the single biggest um, thing that Tim Koval wanted to share, that she died from a gunshot, because this leads people to speculate in an odd direction. That segment that I was talking about from Nancy Grace, well, it's really quite simple. It was saying that if she was killed from the puncture wounds, or she died because of the puncture wounds that she has sustained, if she had been struck with this rock pick or crowbar, or there's also what appears to be a white object that is held in the hand of the perpetrator for some time. If she had been killed by puncture wounds, then this does not match any of the profiling associated with a female, and many people believe that the person in the video is a female. So they were like, this just doesn't seem to add up. On a personal note, before we get into the next segment about Missy Bevers, I have never once believed that this was a woman in the costume. I mean, that was just my 2 cents. At first, I thought it was absolutely just a far out, almost nonsensical claim. I was like, what are people talking about? Obviously, that's a man. Then, even in John Lorden's very first video about Missy Bevers, he shows you a still frame, he just hitting pause at the right time, and you can see the curvaceous figure of the person who is in the costume. But the guys from True Crime Garage, including the captain, said that they had an explanation for that, and they think that it's actually an optical illusion that has been created by the tactical gear, particularly the way that the belt is secured onto that costume. It's creating the illusion that the person is actually much more curvaceous than they actually are. But I would like to continue with huntakiller.com because there are some comments that have been left on this article, and I've always said that perhaps it isn't the best thing to just read off comments from someone else's channel or article or blog or their posts. But right now, I think that it would be a good idea, because I'll read the first one. It's from Baroness SR, who says, "This is right creepy indeed. To me, this is absolutely a woman in the costume. An out-of-shape woman. She has to have that lazy gait. Additionally, if this is the same person who was in the Nissan Altima, I believe mostly women would only signal while leaving an empty parking lot into the road. Oh, no, no, about that last part. As a man, absolutely, I would signal if I were leaving an empty parking lot and getting into the road. Any men can weigh in the comments section. But as far as the walking gait, is that a woman, an out of shape woman who has a lazy gait? Well, there's something else that I wanted to read a comment about somebody who has well, someone has shared something that I think is very noteworthy, and not gonna lie, this is the whole reason why I decided to read these comments from huntakiller.com, giving a shout out to Kay Walker, who says, "I immediately thought the killer was a woman by the way she walked, almost like she's not long had a child and hasn't relearned how to walk without all the extra weight in front." Whether that is true or not, whether I agree with that or not, is beside the point, because Kay Walker, I like the way you think, I like your insight, and I think that that is a very, very good idea. I mean, I said very clearly I lean toward it being a man in the costume. I'm definitely uncertain, but I like the way that you think. Just something about that I think is a very insightful statement. But that people don't only analyze the attempts at finding out the gender of the person. I'd like to read this comment from Freaked Out that says, this person's walk seems intentional and deliberate. This person possibly went to, or even still goes to, that church. Everything was possibly done to hide their true identity. They knew where the cameras were. Look at how they keep moving their eyes away from them directly. Someone new would have been peeking around for cameras, and this is why they're dressed like that, and they walked like that. They may have had access to church cameras and did some practice runs to see what would have worked, to not have had their true identity detected. This person may well be a female. Look how they hold the weapon. actress to make us think that they are a man. They possibly knew where the cameras are, putting on a performance. Pay attention to that word. I strongly suspect the killer knew this church very well, and likely spent time, and maybe even still spends time there, and does a great deal of time inside. Was this an inside job? Beware, the killer is still on the loose. I hope not, but they don't seem to have been caught. But they know, and God knows what they did. Alright, in regards to that word, performance, my second first instinct about watching that video about the person who allegedly murdered Missy Bevers is that, yeah, absolutely. That was my first response. That it seems like this person's putting on an act. Someone who was very familiar with the church, but was pretending that they were not. And it also fits into that type of profile. Tempted to use the word motif, but that might not be the best way to describe it. The persona that has been created. They're using all of this gear to disguise themselves because they are in this church and they don't want anyone to see anything that could possibly tie them to it, so they don't want to be recognized by anyone from the local community. But the reason why I thought that that was a person who was putting on a performance is because I thought that all of the movements were exaggerated, not only the odd walking type, but just the way that they were examining the doors, like, and there's that very famous, what I call a split door, but some people call it Dutch door, where half of it opens, like you can open the bottom half and the top half with two different doorknobs, and I thought the person's reactions were too exaggerated at the time, but I just thought the person was showing a false sense of surprise, just like, oh my gosh, I've never seen a door before. That was, a quotation once again from my previous episodes, but I don't need to talk about that too much. To get back to the important thing, is that someone challenged me on that and said, what you call acting and putting on a performance is actually the person trying to see out of that tactical gear. I mean, they're covered from head to toe. The only thing that seems to be visible is that slot around the eyes, more or less. So this person is having to adjust all of their movements. They're having to adjust their body in odd ways, and they're having to lean their head back really far to look up and down. They're having to turn their head in an exaggerated way, or not exaggerated, they have to put in a lot more effort to turn their head to get a full view of things. And another point that Tim Colville had written in his articles on, it was on the of the Missy Bevers case, the person who was in that costume only caused minimal damage to the church, only caused small amounts of damage when it was coming to try and break certain types of things that were locked, perhaps, because for a very long time, a lot of people believed that the murder of Missy Bevers was a botched robbery, like a robbery that had gone wrong, and the person maybe had been going around first trying to find the security system to disable it, or the place where the tapes would have been recorded. Maybe they were looking for money. Definitely not a very thorough and effective way of doing that, but I definitely would agree to something like that would not be the best idea. And it doesn't appear that the if this was an attempted burglary, I mean, I don't even think I need to talk too much about that because that's not quite something that I believe. But when I did the 2020 update, I read off a more perplexing theory, and that was that Missy Bevers may have been murdered because of something to do with being a personal trainer. If someone thought that she had done things to rip them off, or she was running some type of um, unethical operation that scammed them out of some type of money. I read that off of someone else's page, and that is really just a very far out theory, but I think that some of the more pressing and more vital uh, components to discuss would be that maybe someone was extremely jealous of Missy Bevers. They thought that she may have been having an affair with somebody, so they wanted to get rid of her. They thought that perhaps Missy Bevers had done something wrong to them, but here is one of the theories that can never be taken off the table until we find out who is the exact perpetrator, and that is that Missy Bevers may have been murdered by a serial killer. And on Stephanie Harlow's channel, she put forward a theory that It's just a possibility, mind you, but that she was murdered by a depressed serial killer, someone who wasn't killing regularly, not the type of person who's trying to satiate a sexual urge, or the type of person that is going to do things that are in a calculated way, like putting a radiant on top of Mount Diablo and having it match up to crime scenes. No, someone who only does these types of illegal, destructive, and murderous acts when they are in a really deep, depressed rut in their life, so they resort to murder out of rage, out of distraction from their own sadness, trying to restore a broken ego, taking out their disgusting, frustrated tendencies on an innocent victim. So, as far as a serial killer goes, it definitely does not appear that Midlothian has been ravaged by someone wearing the police tactical SWAT gear, but it really is quite confusing, and this is why people really get pulled into this case. Now, the next person is Matt Compton, who has written into Hunt a Killer and says, just watching this video on YouTube and saw this SWAT person has a weird strut, and that is obvious at two different times. It looks like it may be a prosthetic leg. Just wanted to put that out in case I am right. Sorry if someone brought this up already, but wanted to put it out there. And then it says this comment came in a week ago. Oh yes, people have talked about that, and as I said, there is the possibility that there could be something reflective near the ankle that someone may be wearing a prosthetic leg, and that explains the unusual gait. Um, that theory is definitely compounding, and I think that's the best word. The next comment comes from Jur, who says, how many women have been investigated for this murder? Totally looks like the person in the tactical gear is a chick. I first saw a man. Jur first saw a woman. Next one is from Jeroy Seaver, who says, I'll bet the cops have a pretty good idea who the killer is. They just need some evidence to act on it. And there can be all sorts of troubles that happen with investigations. Not saying that anything is specifically going on with Missy Bevers, because I don't have any inside info on this, but there are times when people encounter the complications involving informants. Sometimes an arrest has not been made because people are trying to they're trying to cover up actions related to confidential informants so they don't jeopardize a different investigation. There could also be the possibility that someone gets sent to jail for something else, or that somebody may have died. Maybe they have an idea about who committed the crime, but that person has passed away, and have an idea, definitely not 100% certainty, but a suspicion. And the next comment comes to us from Jade, who says, this person really does have the exact same walk. Watched him and walking in the police station after the sweater with the animal blood on it. Aha, that would be talking about Randy, the father-in-law, but as we said, he seems to have a solid airtight alibi. And about the blood, there was a garment, I believe it was a shirt, that had blood on it that they had taken to the dry cleaners, but the police did look into that as well, and it was determined that that was dog blood. Joanna Smith says, I believe Todd Kohlhepp killed her. Kohlhepp is spelled Kohlhepp. He's a psycho serial stalker, started out in Arizona, finished up at his killing fields in South Carolina. He's tall, walks with a pronounced limp, and wanted to be caught. And he obviously had the opportunity. Abs says, the killer is estimated to be between 5'1" and 5'7" tall, so not that tall. I mean, even though I said that it's possible that it is a man, and that my first instinct was that it was a man. I mean, 5'1" to 5'7", that is definitely an average height for a woman. I'm 5'8" though, so I would be just above that. I mean, many men are 5'1" to 5'7", especially around the 5'7" range. And Kathy Velody has a great comment here that says, it looks like a person wearing shoulder pads, football shoulder pads. There could be all sorts of body modifications in there. And that's why I put forward that hitman theory that somebody had been given money in exchange for the murder of Missy Bevers. It seemed so methodical, calculated, all the bases had been covered. Not exactly, yeah, you could even say a heavily premeditated crime, but an impersonal crime. This is someone who wanted to commit the murder, not get caught, and no one would ever figure it out. And it was done in a way that wouldn't have unleashed rage. Not the type of personal, what is called like a criminal intimacy, where someone is striking somebody over and over again with said crowbar or rock pick or hammer. No, not at all. Committing the murder, getting out of there, and no one would ever find out who they are. And I should also report that there is the story that there was a dark SUV seen leaving the church where Missy Bevers was murdered, but I just want to say that that might be relevant. Our next comment is from CJAM, I guess we can say CJAM457. No matter if the person is never caught here on Earth, one thing is for sure, God knows who killed this woman, for sure and why. It's not going to be good for the person for two reasons. They broke God's law, and they murdered this woman on holy ground. This person will have to stand before God on Judgment Day. Well, that's why a lot of people are very, very hurt by this story, and I mean, it's affecting people who are even just learning about it. And I've said this before on the channel, but to reiterate a point that I did hear from Lord Narts is that you see the person in the police outfit. This takes place in a church. Even if you're not religious, these are things that are supposed to be parts of the community, the church, the police, and the police, people who are supposed to keep you safe. It's almost like this person is creating this image that, this image of terror and attacking the pillars of security in society. I mean, that obviously wasn't the intention of the perpetrator. The intention was to murder Missy Bevers, and I really can't entertain any theory of any type of botched burglary or that Missy just showed up at the wrong place at the wrong time. I mean, I think that some of the other alternatives that we've gone through in this episode already stand out a little bit more. The next comment is from Alicia Broll, who says, I think there is too many facts that are pointing towards Bobby Wayne Henry. The limp in his walk, the vehicle having riot gear, previous sexual assault, and child pornography. I need to look more deeply into this. Like, does anyone close to him, that Bobby Wayne Henry, have a Nissan Altima, or after 2 years had it? There had to be footprints because it was raining. What shoe size does he wear? Also, he seems like the type that he needs to take something of the victims. I'm really going to look into him. And, the next comment that is coming in simply says that there's a huge MilSim community nearby, and I had never encountered this word before, MilSim, but it turns out it means military simulation, and I think that if this were any type of military simulation gear, we would be able to investigate that further. But I mean, it's possible based on the authenticity of this, in that it's just the police vest that was actually there, and no, that was actually left by someone anonymously, mind you. It says huge milsim community around there. I would look at them. If it said military police, maybe you would have a harder case to make for that. But Tim Coville from Gumshoe Stories has something to say about the suspect Bobby Wayne Henry. Hi, I just wanted to clarify one thing. Bobby Wayne Henry was not a member of the Creekside Church, neither was Missy. She only held workouts there. She belonged to Cowboy Church, and Bob belonged to Avenue Church. But I think that it's a widely accepted fact that Missy Bevers was going to this church to do the gladiator boot camp workout sessions. Missy was somewhat of an accomplished personal trainer, being featured in videos and on the local television station, and you can even see some of that videography for yourself in various parts of YouTube, as well as on certain news reports. Okay, so we will be wrapping up this one with the murder of Missy Bevers. Still unknown about who was behind this crime, but one more time, you can follow Gumshoe Stories. You can find that here on YouTube, run by Tim Coville, as well as the Lord Narts channel has nearly double digits in the episodes on Missy Bevers, nearly. And Stephanie Harlow put out a great 2-part series on Missy Bevers, as well as True Crime Garage has resources. So, thank you so much to everybody who has listened thus far. What do you think happened to Missy Bevers? Some of the challenge questions that I had been exploring in this one were, do you believe that it was a man or a woman in the costume? But the bigger one that I haven't talked too much about on this channel, do you believe that that person has a prosthetic leg? That's another one. And the third one would be, do you believe that the person who murdered Missy Bevers had familiarity with the church? Or do you think that this was the absolute first time? I mean, there are two ways to interpret this. One, this person's putting on a performance. Hey, what's this? What's that? Everything is done in this bizarre, awkward, exaggerated way. Or the police tactical outfit that they're wearing has altered their movements and they have to put in more effort to turn their head, more effort to lean back. What do you think is more likely? And I suppose that there could be a final one, and that would be, even though we don't know who the perpetrator was in the murder of Missy Bevers, what do you think was the motivation? Is this an opportunistic serial killer? Is it the depressed serial killer who doesn't act too frequently? Is this someone who had a personal vendetta against Missy Bevers? Is this a burglary gone wrong? What do you think was the motive? If you would like to respond to any of those questions, you can put your idea in the comments section below. Thank you so much to everybody who has listened to the channel, and you can follow me on Facebook, you can follow me on Instagram at BlackBoxNed88, and you can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com. Links will be posted in the description box here, and I will see you guys on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.